Okay, hello? Am I on? Yeah, everyone can hear me? Okay. Hello, thank you all for joining us today, for everybody who came in person and for everybody joining us via Zoom. My name is Paloma Lopez, and I'm the Education Manager at the Indian Arts Research Center here at the School for Advanced Research. SAR is situated on traditional Tewa lands, and our campus is surrounded by the landscapes of Pueblo, Dene, and Apache communities, all of whom maintain vital connections to this place. We not only honor the ancestral stewards of this land, but we celebrate their past, present, and future. So today we've come together to support, celebrate, and learn from our 2023-2024 ANRE interns, Maie Thomas and Rachel Morris. It has been an absolute pleasure to have spent the last 9-ish months getting to know these incredible young people. They are thoughtful, forward-thinking, and creative, and having them as a part of our team this year has made us all better museum professionals. We will be genuinely very sad when they leave and we have to say goodbye to them at the end of this month. They have made such an impact on everyone lucky enough to have been a part of their journey, but we know that they have bright futures ahead of them and many more adventures to come. So today, Maie and Rachel will be speaking on some of the work that they've done here over the course of their residencies and giving us all a look into the ANRE internship. So Maie will present first and Rachel will follow. So once both have presented, we will open it up to audience questions. For those of you watching on Zoom, please use the Q&A function to ask your questions. Daniel will be monitoring and we will get to as many of them as possible. So we're going to begin with Maie. So Lorna Maie Thomas holds a Bachelor of Arts in Women's and Gender Studies with minors in Anthropology, Museum Studies, and Native Studies from SUNY Potsdam. Before coming to SAR, Maie interned at the Gibson Gallery in Potsdam, New York, and received a fellowship at the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, Massachusetts. She also worked as the Collections Care Manager at the Six Nations Iroquois Cultural Center in Onchayota, New York, as well as the Archival Assistant at the KOR Language and Cultural Center in Kahnawake, Quebec. In the fall, Maie will begin a master's program in museum studies at the University of Toronto. Please welcome Maie Thomas.
All right, Segozo, Guego, Ganakohawi Unget, Swakskalewaga, Akwesasne, Ginidewaga Dagyu, Nekji Santa Fe, Tigidil Ona, Kanien'keha, Niwago Honjoda. So, hello everyone, my Kanien'keha name is Ganakohawi. My English name is Lorna Maie Thomas, though I go by Maie. I'm Bear Clan from Akwesasne, and I'm part of the Kanien'keha, or Mohawk Nation. I'm currently an ANRE intern at the Indian Arts Research Center, and I'm very grateful to be here on the traditional territory of the Tewa people. I'm a little nervous, so thank you. Thank you all for coming today, and I really hope you enjoy the presentations that Rachel and I will both be sharing. Okay. So as interns, we get the opportunity to work on different projects, multiple projects within the IARC in different departments, including collections, registration, and education. And once a week, usually on Tuesdays, we get the opportunity to either work on an individual project or go to another institution to learn more about what they do. So for myself, I decided to work on a project in relation to the online exhibitions, and this was actually part of the reason I was really interested in interning at the IARC in the first place. So my goal for this project was to learn how to build out an online exhibition, and this feels really important to me because it's something that creates more accessibility for people, especially to take that skill and use it back home in Akwesasne. So that was sort of how it started out going, and then it sort of also evolved a little bit as it went on, but that was the initial idea. And then this was so I started working on this project by doing a practice page on the SAR website, and they use WordPress, which is also really great later on because it comes super handy. And I was very grateful to work on this particular project because I didn't have to actually curate it. It was already curated, so my responsibility was building it out on the page where it would live, hopefully forever, on the SAR website. So the top photo you see there is actually the back end of what the website builder looks like, which is not as straightforward as you might think it was, and especially because you can't really see what the front end result will look like. So it's a lot of switching back and forth, and the bottom photo is what the front of the page looks like. So I'm very grateful also to Paloma and Alexia for helping me navigate this site, for showing me how to use it, but also every time I had questions or struggles, they always had a solution, and if they didn't, we would work through it together and we figured everything out. But by doing this, I got much more comfortable using WordPress as a website builder, and I'm just very grateful to have learned the skills that I did while I was doing that. And then my practice page actually ended up being curated, like I said, it was already curated, and that was done by Wayne Gasson, who now works at Mokna, where I am once a week. But yeah, so this was the first part of that project, and I spent a good portion of the previous fall semester working on it. So this second part of my project was to take those skills and apply them back home to Akwesasne. So for me, this is where I live. Akwesasne translates to land where the partridge drums. And there are two interpretations I've heard of what that name means, because it's not in English, it's in Kanien'keha. So the two translations I've heard are that it comes from a story about two hunters who find some partridges. And y'all know what a partridge is? Yeah, okay. I just want to check. What it refers to is it's the sound that their wings make when they flap around, the partridge drums. The other interpretation that I've heard is that it comes from the sound that the water makes when it hits the ice in the wintertime. And as you can see, where I live, there's a lot of water, and so that's pretty common. Sorry. Akwesasne is broken up, in this image, broken up into three different sort of areas. And that's how the community is. So the line that you see, whoops. Okay, anyway, the international border line is sort of where the cursor is. You can see it's right here, and then it runs through the St. Lawrence River. And this means that part of our community is in Canada and part of it is in the US. And then within Canada, there's another border line that you can see going along the St. Lawrence River, and that is the Quebec-Ontario border. So, which makes things very complicated. So that means that parts of Akwesasne are located in Ontario, Canada, Quebec, Canada, and New York State. But we're all one community. And the other thing to note is Akwesasne is, I believe, one of 8 Kanien'keha or Mohawk communities throughout Canada and the US, so we're all pretty close together. But I just want to note that there's more than one Mohawk community, and that actually Kanien'keha, the translation for that means people of the flint, and that's because the area that we lived in had an abundance of flint. And we are one nation that makes up the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, which Haudenosaunee translates to people of the Longhouse, but is more commonly referred to as the Iroquois Confederacy or the Six Nations, if you all are familiar. Yeah, no. Anyway, but we choose to call ourselves Haudenosaunee because of what it means. Iroquois was a term that was sort of imposed on us, as well as Six Nations, so just to exercise our own autonomy and sovereignty. These are all the words that we typically use. One other note with this slide is on the red portion, the largest red island there, that's called Goanoge or Cornwall Islands. And that's where the two bridges are located to go across from the US to Canada. And these are what those bridges look like. And I just think they're really interesting, so I put them on the slide. But so the top photo is the bridge that leads to Canada. And you can see the landmass there is in Cornwall, Ontario, so that's not part of the community. There's the river. And the other end that they didn't have a photo of is Akwesasne. And actually, the really large bridge doesn't exist there anymore. It was replaced by the much smaller one, sort of next to it. So, but that's the bridge that I grew up going on. It felt a little bit dangerous because you could always feel it move, which is not super, didn't feel safe. And then the bottom photo is the bridge that leads to the US. And so that is, the land you see there is Massena, New York. You can kind of see the port of entry at the other end of the bridge a little bit. And then the part that's not seen is the part that connects to Kanien'keha, Cornwall Island. So there's really, at our port, there's no way of going through, crossing the border without going through Akwesasne. So, so the first part of my project was learning to build online exhibitions. The second part was working with my community to make sure that those skills got transferred back home, which was a lot of the reason I chose to be an intern here as well. So the cultural center that I worked with is located on the south side of the border, so it would technically be in the US. And it's, the cultural center houses both the museum and the library. And then within the museum, there's a variety of cultural items, including clothing, beadwork, wampum, baskets, you name it, we have it. And I chose these images because they felt important to me, but also I think they give a good picture of what the cultural center is. So the top photo is just a section of a wampum belt that's called the Akwesasne Friendship Belt or Wolf Belt. And I chose that photo for the importance of its meaning, which I won't talk too much about today, but also for what it meant that it was returned to Akwesasne. So in 2010, it was repatriated by the New York State Museum. And at the time, what they did was they actually took it to Cornwall Island, Kanien'keha, and paddled it across the river to the museum. And then rather than driving it up the road, they had community members stand shoulder to shoulder, and everyone carried it back up to the museum. So, and I bring this up because for me, that was the first repatriation that I had ever witnessed. And I think I was 12 at the time. And I was not interested in working in a museum, and I didn't really know what repatriation was. But that's just like a memory that stuck with me a lot. And this is currently still housed in our museum, and it's got its own special case and lock. It's very secure. But I wanted to share that one. And the fact that it's a wampum belt is important. For us, our wampum belts hold treaties. Basically, there are documents. And so for that one to be returned back home was like, I just remember it was a very significant moment. Like, it was a big thing. Everyone was talking about it for months before it even happens. So then the second photo I'll talk about is actually at the bottom. And that one is an illustration of our creation story. So it's one of the first things you see when you come into the museum. And one of the reasons for that was when they were curating the space, they were thinking the best way to get to know our people, our community, our culture was to learn about where we come from. Because a lot of symbolism throughout and a lot of our stories come from this one story. And it usually takes like hours to tell it in full detail. They were able to condense it down into like 15 sort of panels. So it's not in any way comprehensive. But I also chose it because the artist who did this was originally a black and white illustration done by the late John Fadden. And then for this exhibition, his son Dave Fadden decided to colorize them. And so I've worked with the Faddens for the last 7 years. And they are actually one of the first people I worked with when I started working in museums. So that one also feels important to me. And then the last photo I'll talk about is the one in the middle, and that has baskets in it. And this particular exhibit was really interesting because they chose to do groupings of baskets based on families in Akwesasne. And then within those groupings, you can see the generational like sort of evolution of their styles of basket making all the way throughout. And there's one in particular in the middle that's really brightly colored. And the reason for that is because the contemporary artist who did that was really inspired by the florals and everything like that. And I believe the hat just above it, it's actually like a sun hat that was woven with splints. And I think that was her aunt who made that one. So it's just interesting to see the big differences, but also the similarities in how families weave their baskets. So to talk a bit more about baskets, and I will be passing around some baskets, if that's okay. Yeah, okay. So actually, I'll have you pass that one around. And I'll start this one with you. And if you just want to pass them all to the back, that's very okay with me. So, and the smaller baskets as well, you can sniff them if you want. They have sweetgrass on them, so they actually smell really, really good. But I wanted to give more context for basket making because that becomes a big part of the project later on. So like I said, Akwesasne has a lot of water in it. There are 4 major rivers that run through our community. There's the Grass River, the Racket River, and the St. Regis River, all of which flow into the St. Lawrence River, which does eventually flow into the Atlantic Ocean. And you can see all the sort of water in these images. But it actually, by having so much moisture and like a good part of our community is a bit marshy. So there's many scary mosquitoes. They're like the size of your hand. But 2, it creates a really good environment for our basket making materials, which are black ash trees and sweetgrass. So as you can see the baskets going around, there's sort of actually I'll talk about the materials for a minute. The trees are typically cut down, and then after they're cut, they're dried for, I don't know how long actually, but they're dried, and then the rings are taken from the tree, and then they're split and cut and cleaned, and then made into the splints that you see the baskets are made out of. The other part that we use is the sweetgrass, which is more common on the smaller baskets that are going around. And so the sweetgrass is usually gathered and then used on the rims and centers, but some people will make whole baskets out of sweetgrass. So there are 2 types of baskets, which was why I brought the ones that I brought with me today. The first type is a utility basket, which was the larger one that was going around. They're made to carry and transport things. They're typically made a bit sturdier and a bit thicker. And then the other type is a fancy basket, which were the 2 little ones. And there are some pretty obvious differences between the 2. The main one with fancy baskets being that they are typically small and easy to carry. They usually have colorful splints, so you could see that the red one was dyed very brightly. They usually have a different weaving pattern, which on the smaller one going around, you can see the weaves the curls come off the basket a little bit. And they usually have sweetgrass, whereas a utility basket won't typically have it just because it's not as practical. So these are many more baskets, and they're actually pretty big. You can see that one is pretty sizable. So the first part of that project, like I said, was to work with the IARC to learn how to actually build out the online exhibition through the website. And the second part was to apply those skills at home. So I'm very fortunate to have worked with Marla Jacobs, who is a cultural manager at the Cultural Center in Akwesasne. And then based on our conversations, we decided to do sort of a curated look at the basket collection itself, rather than include every single basket because we didn't really have the time to photograph and document every single basket. We took a look at what the collection capacity was. So this largely meant that we based it on the condition of the baskets. So if they were usually faded, faded meaning the dye on the outside is typically gone, but you open them and they're still really bright, but that's just due to light. So fading, brittlement, and their stability. So some of them were not super stable either. And this all meant that they wouldn't typically go on exhibition either because that may cause them more damage. And they weren't easy for people to access because more handling would compromise the baskets even more. And so this made them very ideal for the project that we were working on. So I'm really grateful I was able to spend an extra week at home during my winter break. to work with Marla and other staff at the Cultural Center, and that's what these photos are. So you can see our sort of setup. Because the lights were so big too, we had to move the baskets really quickly. So we would take the photo, check it just to make sure it was a good quality, and then move it directly out of the light, because again, these are baskets that are already pretty fragile, they're pretty brittle. Some of them were fading. This blue one here was actually had an entire basket woven over the pre-existing basket. So inside, when you move it, it was super scary because the basket you could feel it want to like crunch and break. The outside was stable, but the inside of it was very, very fragile. But that was one that she wanted to include because it's so hard to move from the collection to an exhibit. And the less handling for that one, the better it was. And then you can see in the middle photo, there's just a box full of baskets, which is maybe not an ideal storage solution, but it's better than no storage at all. And it is just based on staff capacity. And then in the bottom right, you can see the camera is taking a photo. So those are actually not baskets. They're gauges that are used to make the splints for basket making. So after I returned to Santa Fe from winter break, I was able to upload the photos and any additional information that we had gathered while we were working on the photographing. And then this was the page that I had built out on their website. So you can see the top photo is actually the back end and the bottom photo is the front facing. This is also not ready for publishing yet. But it looks pretty much the same. So that was the nice part about this and where it differed a bit from WordPress for SAR. The challenge though was that this website, even though they're both WordPress, wasn't quite as intuitive as the one here. So it looks much, much different from like the third slide in where it's like very colorful as far as the layout goes. So there was a bit of a challenge with that in that it kind of felt like I had to learn the website over again, but that was fine because now I can know how to use WordPress in two different, I guess, versions of itself. And yeah, the nice part was that I could do the back end work and pretty much know exactly how it was going to be when it got to the front part. So this is also where the project changed a little bit. Like I said, rather than doing a collections page where every single item would be featured, it is a bit more curated. So this would give more context to the page itself, talking about what are baskets, why are they important, how are they made, and then the additional resources was actually a way for us to tie in the library because they have books and other media to sort of document the basket making process, and so does the Cultural Center. And the nice thing was they have a lot of photos of basket makers who have since passed on, but their families are still making baskets. So by putting those all on like one page, sort of one central location, it would be able to create, again, greater access to community members, to anyone who's interested. But the target audience for this particular project is our community members. And it's, as I said, it's not quite done. We're still working on the text and other things. And this is something I'll probably work with them like beyond my internship to complete just because it's really important. And I know it's hard to, when you already have a job at a cultural center, it's hard to put things down to do sort of another project. So I'll definitely continue working on this, but yeah, so thank you to everyone for coming today. Special thank you to the IARC staff who have helped so much, and Alexia. And then thank you to my fellow intern, Rachel. And to the staff at the Akwesasne Cultural Center who have trusted me to work on this project, and I'm really grateful for the time that we spent together. Marla Jacobs, Justin Cree, and Stacy Mitchell. So that's it, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maie. What Maie humbly omitted is that she actually made this fancy basket up here. Thank you, Maie. And so everybody remember your questions for Maie, keep them locked in your brains, and then we'll ask them once Rachel has completed hers. So Rachel Morris came to us from Durango, Colorado, where she completed a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology with a minor in Native American and Indigenous Studies from Fort Lewis College. Before starting at SAR, Rachel interned at the Center of Southwest Studies at Fort Lewis College, at the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, Massachusetts, and with the Denver Art Museum. Rachel has plans to begin the Museum and Field Studies Master's Program at the University of Colorado Boulder in the fall. Welcome, Rachel Morris.
Oh my goodness, this is already here. I guess time flies. Thanks for being here, everybody. As Paloma mentioned, I'm Rachel. I'm the other intern this year, and I'm originally from the Denver area, and I'm a member of the Oglala Lakota Nation, and I'm super excited to share a little bit about what Maie and I got up to over the course of the last 9 months. And I'd specifically like to share a lot about the social media work that we were able to work on during our internship, which was really excited. I was really excited to do, but I was also very nervous because I've only ever been on the other side of the screen, really, consuming the content, never having to generate it, especially on behalf of an institution like this, only for my own personal pages, so a lot less, stress, a lot less pressure, but it was so much fun to think of this content, and so that's why I wanted to talk about it with you all today. And luckily, I already had a pro by my side. Maie had experience already doing this work, and so she knew the editing software, and she had already so many great ideas, which were really fun to create, and she knew how to execute it, which was very, very helpful. And so she actually also shared with me, which I didn't know before, but when you post something, you only have 3 seconds to capture somebody's attention, and that's it. Usually they'll scroll on to the next thing, and then that's all you got, and you're done. So we knew that if we were going to post something, we'd have to make it really good. And so we kind of had a few goals set out for us at the beginning of it all. They were a bit unspoken. Kind of our goal overall was to just make content that we really enjoyed seeing online for others, and to find what we find engaging, which required a lot of arduous and very stressful research of scrolling online and on TikTok and on Instagram to just see what people were enjoying. But we kind of broke it down into 3 different goals, and the first was to just generally make it accessible. And so making content that is easily digestible, that is approachable to anyone, even if you're a non-museum professional, something that is going to capture your attention regardless of the content specifically. It's fun to watch, it's engaging, and it's also, in a field like this that is historically inaccessible, it's kind of opening the doors up for people to see what happens behind the scenes exactly. And I think that's really special. I really like to see what goes on behind the scenes and things, and oftentimes when you're going into a museum, you are only seeing a gallery space or a certain exhibit. You're not knowing the conversations and the hard work and the little details that go into getting you to that exhibition. So that was our first goal, making it accessible, and that kind of just bled into our next goal, which was to generally share our work and share what we find exciting and interesting, which is absolutely everything. So that made it kind of hard to narrow down our ideas when you want to shout out to the world just how much you enjoy what you do. And so it's also a way that we could almost document our internship and document what we were learning and finding exciting, and bringing along SAR's audience with us too. So not only are we gaining a more holistic understanding of the museum field as it is, but people are doing the same with us as we do this. Because internships, in my experience, are mostly departmentally focused, right? You're getting a very certain experience, you're getting to learn maybe specifically about collections work or registration, so on. And I think Maie mentioned it, our internship is broken up into 3 different sections: collections, registration, and education, and this falls under the education, the social media work does. But you don't get that experience everywhere, so it was really special to also be doing this at the IARC, where we are getting this more whole understanding of the museum field. We're able to bring people along with us, especially in a non-exhibiting institution where so much focus is put on these behind-the-scenes processes. So our last goal was to engage a wide audience, and one of the ways that we tried to do this was again, doing our research, diving into the trends and the conversations that were already popular so we could bring SAR into those conversations. The content that people were already seeking out, we just wanted to replicate that and make it so, again, it's content that's easily digestible and approachable. So when we make a reel about making a box, it would reach audiences farther than just in SAR's community or anybody who's already following SAR. You can kind of extend your reach because it's tapping into things that a lot of people find very interesting. So, yeah. So one of the ways that we tried to do this was connecting people to the people of the IARC and SAR. And one of our first reels actually on the left here, and one of our best performing actually was just us introducing the IARC team to the Instagram page and the Facebook page. It's very simple. It's just a quick clip introducing people, their names and their job titles, and it's all set to the Full House theme song, which is just really fun. I think that was a trend around that time, if not just before. So it was really fun. Yeah. But it kind of humanizes the work, right? When you're able to put a face to the work, it's easy to connect to it. It's easy to understand the impact of it because you can see the humans who are making it possible. It just makes it that much more warm. And when you dive even deeper, you get to learn what their favorite piece is, which is really cool. And that does a few things. Not only does it kind of like create an avenue where you can deepen your relationship with the people at the IARC who you might not get to interact with all the time, but who do such amazing work that you probably hear about a lot. And so you get to learn more about them, and they also express a little bit about who they are and what's important to them when they're talking about the pieces that are their favorites. And we did ask a lot of them that day just to pick one piece. This could probably be a series almost of all of the favorite pieces, because if you've ever been to the collection, you know it's so beautiful in there. It's so hard to pick just one thing. And so it's also a special video because you get a sneak peek into the collection that you might not have gotten before. And these pieces get to be shown far and wide because with like online exhibitions, you can reach people who are maybe across the country or who can't just make it into the IARC. So again, it is accessible in that way too. The collection is reaching even farther than the walls of the building. And then the 15 Fast Questions videos was kind of inspired by Vogue's 73 Questions videos, if you've ever seen it. They're very fun videos, and what I like about them is that maybe you're watching your favorite actor, your favorite singer, so on, and you know them in their professional roles, right? You know them maybe for their best song or their best movie, what their techniques are. But you don't necessarily get to know what their favorite color is, or what their favorite smell is, or who their celebrity look-like is. And it's maybe information you didn't know that you needed, but now you know that you do want. But it's cool, it's really amazing to get to know these people on our end making these videos, and then hopefully as an audience getting to see these people from multiple sides. And so also thank you to Michael Naminga for his patience and kindness in our first taking of one of these videos, because we had a lot of technical difficulties that we've since worked out. And it's a very fun video to film, and thank you to Phil Deloria and Sarah as well. Follow SAR on Instagram and TikTok, only Instagram and Facebook if you want to see these videos. Just have to say that, and we have some upcoming ones we are very excited about making as well. So yeah, that's one of the ways that we tried to accomplish our goals. The next was, again, just generally sharing the skills that we were expanding upon or improving upon, or in general gaining during our internship. So this one on the left is just a behind the scenes of our setup, and we had to get really creative with some of our setups. You'll see a little bit later what I mean by that. But this was the setup for our object labeling reel, which is a pretty important skill to have in collections work alongside textile rolling. And again, it's almost like the audience is coming with us along on our internship. We're almost documenting this process of our growth in the museum field, but people are able to see behind the scenes, see what the details are that you don't get to when you are just walking into a museum's doors. So the audience is almost growing alongside of us, seeing these really important aspects of our work. And the third way that we tried to do this was just in general connecting audiences to the projects that we were working on over the course of the last 9 months. And this is one of them. This is the basket sectional inventory that was one of our collections projects. And this reel is pretty representative of the process and what it actually looked like. I'm sorry for the graininess, but for some reason the transition from my phone to the computer doesn't always go super smoothly. But if you want to see a clearer version of it, follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. But doing this inventory, the baskets would come off the shelf one by one. We were doing this to make sure that the baskets were in the right spot, that it was accurate in the database, and that they were also they were clearly marked so that when you went to go find one of these baskets on the shelf, you'd be able to find it pretty easily. So really just making sure that that accuracy in the database is represented on the shelf as well. And once that was done, and once the shelf was vacuumed and everything was set, they would one by one go back onto the shelf. And again, it's almost like a sneak peek into the collection, right? Because you might not get to see these baskets otherwise, or in such detail as well, which is really special. And these baskets get to be held and come off of the shelf and breathe for a little while too. But this is our setup down here too. And again, we had to get creative. This is just one of our step stools, and then just a board, our gimbal, and then the phone. And it was one long continuous shot. And then on the back end, with the editing, we just split the clips into what we wanted and got rid of the rest. And it's not an information overload, right? You're still getting a peek into the work that we're doing. Even if you are just scrolling on Instagram, you still get to see what we're up to, even if you don't read the caption. And if you do want to know more, that information is available to you. So that was one of our collections projects. And then these are two of our other projects, one for registration, which was to reconcile the multi-part records in the database, which is in anticipation for an upcoming barcoding project that is coming down the road for the IARC. And so, for example, let's say 10 buttons come into the collection. It's a lot easier to keep track of them when they are under one number and designated as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so on, instead of all having individual numbers. And that will make it a lot easier to keep track of them as they move around, or just in general for accuracy. And this, just a peek into registration work, I think shows the nitty-gritty details that happen in the museum field, the behind the scenes of how detail-oriented the work has to be to ensure that not only does everything run smoothly in the museum, but also that the stories of these pieces are not lost, and that all the information of like their journey getting to the museum or the institution is still there. All of the documentation and such and registration work is really important, and this is just a sneak peek into it. And then one of our education projects, and in that video, we are running through the third activity on the grounded in clay curriculum, and we are just practicing making pinch pots, and we're ensuring that the instructions are smooth and that it's easy to follow, so that if a class did try to use this when they went to go see grounded in clay and were leaving and engaging with that material outside of the museum, that it would just be an engaging experience where they could learn a lot about pottery and what it means to people. And again, it's not a information overload. It's a very scenic video that, if anything, you get a break in your day, you get to pause and watch a video of us just playing with clay. And if you did want to learn more, again, you can go into the caption. And that's something we tried to do, again, across all of our videos, was not overload people with museum stuff all the time, even though that is our personalities. We want to throw museum stuff out there all the time because we love what we do. But yes, just making content, again, that's engaging, that is informative, but fun to watch as well. So, yeah. And we were actually able to compile some of the analytical information from Hootsuite, which is the platform that we use to post these, the content on both Facebook and Instagram all at once. And we were able to learn that SAR's Instagram actually gained almost 500 new followers over the course of the last 9 months, which is really amazing. And also, there is a upward positive trend of follower engagement on Facebook as well. And I think it's really powerful because it just goes to show how when you have content being made by public programming and communications that is promoting really amazing events or other talks or SAR in general, paired with content about museum work and other maybe more silly videos or more fun and content, they can really complement each other and push each other out to reach a wider audience as well. Because maybe you're pulled in by seeing a really, really cool event that's going on, and then you see a box making ASMR reel, and you're like, well, I didn't really expect that to be next, but it's something that's interesting and that maybe you want to learn even more about. And so we also were able to learn that over the last 9 months, the page has reached over 90,000 users. So again, extending the reach outside of campus walls, outside of Santa Fe, outside of the state, and so on. And also when I was typing this up in Word, Word thought it was informative for me to tell you that that's about the capacity of Los Angeles Memorial Stadium, not museum. I'm in museum word. But I think it really is a cool stat, and it really goes to show how powerful social media can be as a tool when you use it that way and look at it that way, in reaching a wider audience and making sure that you have an impact. So, yeah. And then, yeah, some behind-the-scenes shots. Again, like I mentioned earlier, we had to get a bit creative, and that can sometimes mean taping your phone to the ceiling, where it stays for the next hour and a half. It's, you know, and sometimes you make your own mounts and props and such. On the upper right, in the upper right photo, I'm cutting out some velvet, which eventually turned into this here, which Maie sewed. And we scoured all of campus to find a Lazy Susan, but they've disappeared, I guess. So we had to do this with a potter's wheel and get creative with that. And we used that for our Rock Your Mocks reel, which it was really cool too, because again, we got to show off some beautiful pairs of moccasins in the collections that you might not have even seen on a tour. So it was a really fun video to make. And then yeah, thank you again to Michael. This is a behind the scenes shot of our first go at our 15 Fast Questions videos. And next to it is a little snippet of the editing process. Maie was editing the ASMR box making reel in this video. And editing can be either very complicated or very simple. With the 15 Fast Questions videos, it's very simple. It's just a little piece of text at the very beginning. But with our Wes Anderson reel, for example, that can take a lot of dedication and fumbling around. Shout out Maie for that one. She really executed on that. It looks amazing. But yeah, just some behind the scenes shots. And I also should explain the lower right photo where Maie is wearing the hard hat. We've never actually had to use the hard hats in our work from day to day. However, we have been dying for an excuse to just wear it in one of the videos. And this was our time. That was our promotion for the Anne Ray internship when the deadline was coming up. So again, we're just trying to have fun with it, trying to make our passion for this work shine through our posts and get people to engage with this work that we love so much at a place that we love to work at. That is doing amazing work. We just wanted to amplify that with our posts, and also just, I think having to do social media was also surprising to me because of how it made Maie and I look at our work in very creative and different ways than we might not have otherwise. And so we really had to understand the purpose and the process of what we were doing so we could communicate that through our videos. Just hit my mic, sorry. But I think it even deepened the impact of this internship on us because we were coming to work every day excited to learn the new skills and improve upon the skills that we already have and show you all how we were doing that. And I think that'll make an impact on us even outside of this internship and into our next adventures as well. So, thank you to all of these wonderful people. There are so many people to thank. We had to make a rolling credits scene, but truly we could not have made it. We couldn't have made any of this possible without all of you. You all had a very big role in making this internship as enjoyable and impactful as it was. So yeah, and that's also from Maie. Maie seconds this. Thank you as well. And thank you to you all as well for being here. Of course, follow SAR on Instagram and Facebook and on X. That's X. Don't see the Twitter symbol right there, I guess. But and also thank you to Maie too, because none of it would have been possible without her. And I'm very grateful to have met her along this way. So yeah, Maie. So thank you all for
Thank you so much, Rachel. We will miss you for a lot of reasons, but this is a real big one. We have a big shoes to fill when you leave. So yeah, I'd like to open things up to questions. Does anybody have questions? Michael.
I have a question for Maie. So the drone shots made me think of, theoretically, I'm sure you know this, the Jay Treaty lets you Mohawk people go back and forth without showing a passport. Sure. Did you actually do that? I mean, is that something that actually takes place on a regular basis?
So for Yes and no. So I personally don't have a passport, but I can cross the port of entry where I live with my status card. So again, that just, and that's the one you can either use because we live on the border, we have three status cards. One from the Canadian government, one from the US government, and one that's authorized through our sovereign nationhood. So yeah, I can cross our territory port sort of easily with any of those cards or with like a license. But when it comes to crossing any other port of entry, it's not usually the case.
I mean, you would actually be denied access?
I don't know if they've outright denied, they haven't outright denied me, but I've gone and used my status card, say in like Ogdensburg, New York, which is about 45 minutes from where I live, but they will ask me for additional identification, like a birth certificate, a driver's license. I went through one time and they told me they couldn't take my tribal ID because it could have been made at home, even though it's a federally issued ID. So they give and take.
Does anyone else have a question? Daniel, any in the chat? All right, if you're watching on Zoom and you have questions, put them in the Q&A, please. Well, I have a question. I'll start with one for Rachel. Rachel, can you tell us a little bit about your sort of favorite reel to make?
Oh, that's tough. We had a lot of fun making the Anne Ray internship reel. I think we also had a very concerted effort to not actually be in any of the videos or have our voice in any of the videos, but that one was totally all us. But it was a lot of fun to just think of the shots and make them and film it and stuff. And also the ASMR box reel one, or box making one, because it's just one of our favorite parts of collections work as well. So yeah, what about you?
Oh, I like all of them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't like being in them. I think for editing, personally, the Wes Anderson one was the most challenging, but also the most fun.
Yeah.
But that was also really fun to film. We got to film it in here.
Yeah.
Rachel was upstairs.
I did that. If you watched it, I ran upstairs like 5 times just trying to get this right. And I was like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was a long day.
Yeah, but it was fun.
Oh, we have another question here.
Get my steps in.
Great presentation, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm curious if you each, if you have an ultimate dream job as you look into your future, each of you.
What else is a big question?
Ooh. Gosh, I feel like just in collections work probably somewhere.
Yeah.
Alexis is shouting me. But yeah, I think just doing something similar to what's happening at the IARC would be a very big dream of mine, and anywhere that happens and that will take me, I'll go. So.
Yeah.
We'd be lucky to have you.
Yeah. Same. I really do enjoy working in collections, and I think for me, I would like to stay more local to my community. So looking at, I guess my dream job would be working as a collections person in Akwesasne.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
I don't know, I stepped out of the way.
Thank you. It makes me want to apply to be an intern. That's kind of what I want to know. What is the application process? What sorts of numbers? I would think anybody who watched that presentation, which I did, the video that you guys, you'd have thousands of people applying because it just looks like so much fun. So tell me a little bit about how you recruit people and what the numbers look like. I know you're not necessarily in charge of that, but you should probably wind up with a whole bunch more applications because of that.
Yeah, I feel like when I heard of the internship, it was by word of mouth at the Center of Southwest Studies. Amy Cow actually told me about the opportunity, and so what about you?
I actually got 2 different people who messaged me the flyer for it like 3 days before the deadline. So shout out my stepmom, Shauna. Yeah, but I know the application wasn't terribly difficult. I mean, it's like pretty basic. You have like the application and then like a writing sample, your resume, cover letter,
Recommendation letter.
recommendations, yeah, stuff like that.
And so I feel like when we were thinking about promoting it, it is such an amazing opportunity that we were like, everybody should be doing this, right? And this was another trend, actually, we're NRA interns, of course we ... That was a pretty big trend in different kind of settings, and so we thought it was a very effective and simple way to communicate all of the many perks of this internship, and so we thought that would be a good way to maybe reach more people. And on Facebook, I think it reached like 17,000 views or something like that. It was really, really wild, I don't know. But I think that was the only, and then we made a couple infographics. So I feel like trying to, I guess, get the word out was just about making as much content as possible, and then, like, again, content that's engaging and exciting and that's happening, hip and happening in the moment, so.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Yes.
Thank you for those lovely presentations. What is it about collections work that you like so much?
Making boxes. It is a good plus, though. I feel like growing up, I just always loved museums, and they were where I spent so many birthdays, and they were just like a source of wonder to me. And so being able to be on the collection side of things, you get to have such a relationship with the belongings in the collection, and you get to work with amazing people who are equally as passionate about making sure that those belongings are, you know, supported and best taken care of on the other side. And so, and you get to see the process in maybe an exhibiting institution of that object getting out of where it is being housed and into the gallery, and I think that's pretty fascinating to me. But I would do it as, that's one of my things, is I would love to do pretty much all parts of museum work and wear all the hats, which is also maybe a future dream job, to a place where I can wear multiple hats, but that's what I'd say.
All the same things.
I keep talking for so long. It's like,
no, you're good. I think so. I actually I've gone to museums a lot throughout my life. My grandmother used to work at NMAI, so I feel like I got really used to seeing, especially NMAI. I think I've been there like 1,000 times, but I didn't really understand fully like what her job was, or like. I thought it was just, you know, like an exhibiting thing. She was an archivist. I didn't know what that meant till like 3 years ago. But then when I started working in museums, I started to realize like how many opportunities there are in it for like community members, for professionals, for building relationships, but also, like Rachel said, just being able to care for objects that have historically not been treated well, and then connecting them back, like I said in my presentation, like getting a wampum belt repatriated. And when I was 12, I didn't know what that meant. But now as an adult, I'm like, oh, that was a really formative experience for me. So I don't know, just like all the opportunity, and then the fact that it's such an unchanging, like evolving field, I think is really nice and offers more opportunity. So, yeah.
All right. We can take maybe one more. Here we go. Yeah. Daniel, are there any in Zoom? Okay.
Thank you so much both for your presentations. They were really amazing. I have a question for Maie, but Rachel, if you want to step in and talk about your experience, that would be also great. So I imagine the protocols between like a research center here and a cultural center where you were before are kind of different, the way that maybe the community is involved. I was wondering if you had any inspiration in the way that things are done here that you're bringing home with you and you want to share with the people that you work with.
Yeah, there's a pretty big difference, like in the structure, in like the way things are cared for. One of the biggest challenges back home and I've worked at maybe about 3 or 4 different museums in my community, and then one like sister community. The biggest challenge for us is always storage, which is also a challenge here. And then adequate like resources. So like I said, the one photo with the baskets that were just like sort of thrown into a box, like is not ideal. But there's, you know, limited capacity. But I think everything I've learned here is stuff that I want to take back. Like I feel like I knew how to make a box, but I can make a box better now. And I knew how to do a cavity mount, but I can do it better now. And I know more of like the names of things that I need, and I think it would be nice to upgrade our storage facilities so that rather than pulling things out of storage, it'd be nice for community members to be able to go into our storage and actually look around. So I think And after I talked with Marla as well, who works at the Cultural Center, she's also interested in doing like an open storage. And I showed her the pictures here, and she thought it was really cool. So I think more of like more community-based, getting more community members into our collection, because they are used to seeing just sort of our exhibition areas. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you both so much. You really, truly will be missed. We'll miss your passion, and we'll miss your enthusiasm and your light. But we're so excited to see what you'll do next. Thank you both. Thank you. And thank